I'm going. It's really a reminder of the work we need to achieve gender parity. So really excited to be here. So I'll answer the very first question that Dr. Bunmi had, which is, what does embracing equity mean to me? Now, Dr. Pritchett alluded to some of these, and I'm glad that she went into talking through that. When we think about embracing equity, it means working hard to ensure the next generation of women have the tools and resources to be successful. And when I say women, I'm also talking about women of color. I mean, women who are usually the most marginalized groups. Now, this is something that's very, very passionate to me, because when we think about marginalized groups, I am one of them, right? All of us here are one of them. And so when we think about that, we have to work our way up the ladder and sit in rooms where no one looks like us, right? So Dr. Pritchett talked about being the only one. See, people from marginalized groups are constantly navigating negative biases in the workplace around them, and we need to hone in on this skill intentionally. Oftentimes, we're seen as chameleons. We code switch, adjusting our mannerisms to appropriately meet the tone and delivery needed for our audiences. And we're constantly doing this over and over again. So when you think about the intersection of race and gender, these mannerisms manifest as a set of roles we're expected to play or acceptable stereotypes in which we fit into. And this over time just becomes exhausting. It gets exhausting for us, especially as women, just not in the workplace, but wherever we go. We always have to keep adjusting and changing. As Dr. Dominique said, that why do we have to do that? We do that because we just want to do it. No one asks us to. So we really have to think about who we are today. So listen, nobody should feel forced to place themselves in a box or check their authentic self at the door, because having to constantly adapt your identity is mentally exhausting and can lead to burnout. And Dr. Dominique just really talked about, going into that place where you have to meditate. So I'm one of those things. I work out every morning. I do my meditations in the morning, at night. It's so important for me to say, hey, I need to take care of myself. I need to take care of my mental health, because we constantly are in environments where we have to prove ourselves. So embracing equity means being a strong ally to everyone here, being a voice and an advocate for women going through inequities, and providing them the tools they need to grow and thrive by harnessing their superpower, right? And giving them the resources they need to have equal opportunities, just like members of majority groups. Now, you don't want to get me started with that, because I believe that there is a place in the room for every single person listening on this call, okay? So my role is to embrace equity by encouraging a culture of empathy and understanding within everyone around me. So I'm going to say to everyone here, I don't know what you may be going through at this point. I don't know what no's you've heard. I don't know what doors have been shut in your face, but I want to explain that you do not have to limit yourself, because you do have a place in the room. So when we think about us as women, what can we do to embrace equity? This means being self-aware and embracing our own strengths, right? And really thinking about our growth of opportunities and the life path that makes us unique. Each of us are very, very unique. We do not have to be someone else. We do not have to sound like someone else. We don't have to try to be like someone else. You are enough, right? So taking this first step of self-awareness enables us to be open. It enables us to be curious and eager to embrace our own uniqueness and be able to learn and grow and be empowered to be the best versions of ourselves. How can you do this? Well, let me share a quick story with you all. So I came to the US about 20 years ago, and I came for my MBA. And then after I finished my MBA, I worked at Merrill Lynch. It just really seemed like the right path for me, because when I was in Nigeria, I worked in the banking industry. And then I came here for my MBA and I went in the banking industry as well. So what happened was I worked with Merrill Lynch for a little bit. And I guess I just got tired of telling rich people what to do with their money and crunching numbers. Pretty much, right? And so I found myself more leaning towards the people side. And so I did this other internship in this organization called Aerotech at the time. It was a staffing company. And so when I got into, talk about being the only one in the room, there's over like 35 people. It was one of like a satellite office. And I was one of two Black women. That was it. And the other Black woman was actually the admin assistant. And so when I joined, it was a really, really hardcore organization. And I remember that you just had to kind of grind in this job. And at the time, I remember the head, it was like a GM of the organization. He told my manager at the time that I wasn't going to make it. He basically said, there's just something about her. She can't grind. She can't do this job. And I really don't think you should focus on really helping her to grow. And my manager told me, I don't know why he told me. I think he told me because he wanted me to listen and hear it, but also be able to say, hey, what can I do to make sure that I can fight, right? And not let those words control me. I'm going to just say fast forward, I ended up being the best in that organization in terms of my numbers. I ended up winning awards. I ended up traveling to their DC office and a lot of different things. Now, why do I share this story? Fast forward 10 years, I had worked in another corporate organization and I started working at Amazon at the time. And I was really leading our robotics teams and our products teams. And I got a LinkedIn request. And who was it? I'm going to call his name Steve. Steve is the one guy who said I was not going to make it, that I was not going to do well. And so he had seen over the course of the years that I'm working in one of the best tech organizations. And he reached out to me and said, hey, I really want a job on your team. Listen, 12 years ago, he was a GM of this place that I worked. I walked in from someone who had just finished her MBA, had an accent from Nigeria and all these things. He told me I wasn't going to make it. And here he is coming and asking me for a job. Listen, I would just want to let you know that your past does not determine your future. The words that these people have said over you does not determine. You have to understand that you are enough. Did he get the job? No, he didn't. Now, it wasn't because he didn't. I didn't want to give him the job, right? I opened the role for everyone else. So again, someone who said you were not going to make it, someone who said you're not going to do what you can to thrive, can end up being the person who comes back. So do not let those words control you, because those words don't mean anything, right? So again, one thing I will say again is when we think about organizations, I lead DEI right now, and I worked at Apple, I worked at Amazon, and doing this work, we're not where we need to be. But what I think organizations should do to ensure fair and just treatment for all people in the workplace is to create access for all and create an environment that brings everyone in. Employees should feel empowered, connected, included, and valued. Organizations need to acknowledge the diverse backgrounds of people and customers and seek to understand our many lived experiences, right? Which allows them to create positive and inclusive, equitable cultures. So what message do I have for the ladies on this call as I round up? One, be accountable. Accountability means saying that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. Hold yourself accountable, set personal goals, and be decisive when it comes to your choices. A large part of our success comes from the mistakes that you make, and it's okay to make those mistakes. And the ability to own them, fix them, and prevent them from happening in the future. Number two, be confident. Be confident knowing that you are enough, like I said, and be successful in whatever you do. It is important that you step up and be confident in your work, because we work just as hard as our male colleagues, right? And we can handle the same challenges they can. So stop questioning your abilities, because we're all capable of the work if we could just have the confidence to know that we are enough. And finally, be an investor, give back. Investing in others is imperative. When you change one person's life, that impact can positively affect their family, their community, and everyone around them. Think about what you can do. Think about what Trailblazer Femme is about. It's about giving back. It's about empowering women, to really think about what their superpower is. So what can you do to give back to somebody else? Because when you do that, it affects their whole life. In the professional world, this translates to a positive impact on your team, your function, your company, your church, whatever it is that you're doing. So do what you can to give back. So again, 3 points is be accountable. Do what you say you're going to do. Very important. Be confident. You can do it. You're enough. You have everything it takes to get to the next level. And be an investor. Give back to others. All right, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Ade, for that amazing session. You've given us the boost to the next level as well. And what an amazing, relatable story. I'm sure you could see the comment section blowing up, because if you hadn't continued pushing on and showing your worth, another piece about embracing equity is developing the knowledge and skills to be able to show up, whether you're the only one in the room, whether you're on stage or whether you're in the room, to show that you are a person of worth and you have the value to provide by continually increasing and advancing in knowledge and skills. So thank you so much for that amazing session. I'm trying to read some comments here. You didn't rely on anyone to tell you you're worthy. You knew your worth. Awesome. Someone says, my word going forward is I'm enough. And for me, it's definitely boosted. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone that has any questions, please drop it in the chat or just raise your hand and I'll bring you right up. And yeah, people love all these strategies. Thank you. Thank you for what you're sharing with us. Accountability, I believe, is a very big one. And I want to open it up to you as a kicking off question, like, how do you stay accountable in your day-to-day life, whether at work or in life?
I would say that in different ways, I have accountability partners. I would say it's very, very important. I have people who peers who do what I do. I have mentors who I look up to that have gone beyond where I am today. And for the most part, I set aside time. And this is why I mentioned that you really have to take care of yourself, your career. I really set aside time for, who I need to hold myself accountable. So when it comes to like working out, I own a Peloton and we have this group where we work out every morning or work out in the evening. So we hold each other accountable. When it comes to, my professional career, I have people who we talk to like, what's the next level? There's nothing wrong in wanting more. And I'm just one of those people, I selfishly want the best. And so I'm always thinking about what that next level is for me. And I have people who are ready to push me. So people hold me accountable for, you said you were going to do this, let's go ahead and do it. You said you were going to read that book, let's go ahead and make sure we're doing it. And so you have to set goals for yourself. And I know we hear all these things about goals all the time. If you don't set goals for yourself, how can you make yourself accountable, right? And so for the most part, I say, here are the 5 things that I want to achieve this year. You hear people say that they have more or less like a vision board, whatever it is, whatever works for you. You just have to make sure you have those things listed. And then how am I going to accomplish these things? You have to hold yourself accountable. Certain times it's my husband that says, hey, you remember you said you were going to do that? And just make sure they're constantly reminding you again that you really, really need to move forward into the things that you said you were going to do and do them. And so those are the key ways and key areas that I really think about setting goals for myself and making sure I have people who hold me accountable towards those goals so that I can achieve them. And once I achieve those goals, I celebrate, and then it's like on to the next, right?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Ade, for sharing that. And, it brings to mind what we do at Trailblazer Femme. Accountability is a major part of it. And just this last week, in our group chat, because we have a group chat with the members, people were dropping in the chat about things they wanted to be accountable for. Someone wanted to resume their daily exercises. And, she's like, check in with me on Wednesday, check in with me on Friday. And, beyond just the check-in, we're breaking it down like, okay, you want to resume an exercise practice. What exactly is it? Is it walking? Is it running? Is it Zumba? How often do you want to do it? And what happens if you don't do it? Things like that. So those are all the things that make us trailblazing and help us to be able to achieve our goals and everything.
Yeah, and I would say that certain times people just think I have to exercise. Oh my goodness. Like you just start small. I don't know if any of you have read the book Atomic Habits. Like you just start small. You say, hey, I'm going to start with 5 minutes today, 10 minutes today, whatever it is, just start small. Don't really think. And I know Nigerians are very ambitious. Like I have to tell you, I'm going to do this big thing and then you never do anything. No, you just start small and say, what can I do each day to help achieve the goal that I want to? And then eventually it builds over time. And then you have people who are kind of helping you work towards that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Atomic Habits by James Clear is a gem for anyone who hasn't read it. Yeah. Okay. So I see a question in the chat. If you're starting up an ERG, and that's an employee resource group in your organization, where can you start?
Great question. So ERGs are amazing. One of the things that, and I think Dr. Dominique talked about this, is certain times when you get into an organization and you see people who don't look like yourself, you want to be able to be in an environment where you can find people who have similar identities, backgrounds, stories, and things like that. And so you gravitate towards that because that's the only people that or communities that remind you of yourself. And so when you think about starting an ERG, basically you just start by finding people. So let me give an example. When I started at Amazon, I remember I was walking down the hallways in Seattle and I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And then every time I saw a Black woman, I'm like, oh, hey, like, hi, it's great to see you. And so what happened was we started talking to each other and we decided, like, how do we form a community? And so what we started to do was anytime we're in Seattle at the same time, we would always have dinner and would always have a meeting. And believe it or not, we started our own women's group, like the Black women of like Amazon. And so when you think about starting off an ERG really, when it's done well, can really help create community and belonging in an organization. So I always say start off with building a community. And certain times people have like Slack channels or stuff like that where they start to have conversations, like share best practices. Once you're able to build that community to the point where you're saying, hey, we're about 30 of us, we can start an ERG, have a vision, have a mission, what you're trying to accomplish, and make sure those things tie to business outcomes. Why did I say business outcomes? Because certain times organizations are about the head. They don't care about feelings. And I'm going to share that. They care about how is this going to add to the bottom line? So when you really think about starting an ERG, you want to make sure that it really helps align towards that business outcome. What is the vision? What's the mission? How does this tie to the company values? And then when you're able to do that, find an executive sponsor. Why? Like, you all can be meeting and talking about different things. You better find someone who sits at the table where the CEO is that can help you all move forward, whatever that is that you want to accomplish as a company. So find an executive sponsor, tell them exactly who we are the Black women of blah, blah, blah. And this is what we want to accomplish. That executive sponsor will go there and advocate for you and advocate for your community. So once you have a vision, you have a plan, you have an executive sponsor, then you can move on to say, what can we do? So for instance, your company launches products. What does this product look like for Black women? How can we help the company in terms of making sure that we have products that are inclusive? So it's beyond community, it's beyond what we can do to make business impact, because that's really where an organization actually recognizes what you're doing. And so the building a community is one good space where we all feel like, okay, I can actually be myself in front of these people, but then what else can you do to really help to make that business impact overall?
And that's very helpful, Ade. I think one other thing you mentioned was that sponsoring bit and making sure that we're tying it with something. Because when I look at different organizations I've been in, one of the struggles I see when it comes to ARGs is sometimes struggling with that ROI. What is the ROI beyond just the community? And you find that some people, even when they have great ideas, they're set back because they can't seem to tie it into something, or they're set back because there is no other person who's championing their voice. So you mentioned a couple of things in there that help with that business outcome. Now, to be honest, just like you said, equity, I believe we don't always need to tie it with an ROI and a target and stuff, but in a business setting, people always want something to be able to lean on. So what would you say in your experience in terms of ROI? How do you, for people who are listening on the call who want to sell that idea and who want to make sure they're tying it out with business outcomes, what have you found to be most effective? And what examples of goals, for example, do you set that you can measure to show that it's something that it's a win-win overall?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Honestly, when I think about tying activities that we do to business outcomes, some of our ERGs right now, they do a lot really to create communities, right? But there are other things that are important to the company, like how can we make sure we're hiring people who look more like us, and how can us as an ERG help towards that? So whether it's basically we're bringing people in, but I can be a source to talk to Black women or Asian women or Latinx women who may not feel like this is the environment that I need to belong in. And so when I was at Amazon, we set up something called candidate chats, and the ERGs were helping towards that. So when they find people who are from underrepresented communities that are interviewing, they ask them, hey, let's talk to you. So it almost makes the candidate feel like, oh, I actually have a community already. I haven't even joined the organization and things like that. And whether you like it or not, we started to tie the candidate chats to like offers to really see that over time, these candidate chats increase offers over 10, 15%, because we found more underrepresented groups accepting their offers when they started to have this. And so we had that statistics and data to actually help to kind of tie towards our hiring. And when we did that, leaders started to hear, oh, this is actually helping us to hire more. We got their attention because they saw it was tied towards something that's important, which is a hiring metric. Other things that we can do is basically our mentorship programs, right? And so we have our ERGs help with mentorship programs, but we even have mentorship programs that are tied towards like women and underrepresented groups. And so increasing that, because for the most part, people from underrepresented groups do not have the development that they need in most cases, because managers are kind of geared towards people that look like them and they're giving them the projects and the opportunities. So how can we kind of mentor? And so we tied that mentorship to career growth. So we did like a pilot program for like 6 months. And over time, we saw that we had more promotions for women and underrepresented group who had gone through that pilot program. And so this is something that ERGs were able to help out with. So in terms of tying your vision, whether you're an individual contributor, whether you're a manager, what can I do as an underrepresented group to kind of help make impact? It's basically having a voice. It's basically speaking up and challenging the status quo. It's basically saying, what can I do to make sure that my role has an impact? I have a voice in the things that we're doing, whether it's the products that we're creating, whether it's making sure that I'm creating a community where people feel that they belong. There's so many things that you can do as an individual, as an ERG, to just make sure that we're moving the needle. Because quite frankly, especially in different organizations, the heart is important, but it has to tie to the head. There's the head and the heart of DEI, and you need both, right? And so it's trying to help organizations to understand that it's just not the numbers all the time, but really that feeling of belonging ties to it, and that's really what makes companies successful, and the data shows it. The last thing I will say is tie everything that you're doing to data. Certain times it's hard, but that's really what these leaders like speak. They speak numbers, they speak metrics. And so you have McKinsey and all these other reports that you can tie to how it's successful. You can be successful having a truly diverse organizations. And that's how I have been successful. I go to a room and I just don't say, we need to do this. We're like, no. Data shows that if we do this, this happens, and here's why. And I think that's really been able to help in terms of like moving the needle. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. I think she's muted there for a second. Wow, this is amazing. And we can tell you're a pro at this. So participants in the group looking at ERG, follow Baller on LinkedIn. She'll share her profile as well. But as we wrap up today, and I'm wondering if Dr. Dominique is available to do some final chime in as well with Baller and Fofo and myself. I love what Dr. Dominique posted online this week regarding this whole topic. So, we've had refreshers, we've had reminders, we've been able to pick on new things that we can do to continue to embrace equity, both for ourselves and our families, our communities and organizations. And just tying it into the theme for today, which is limitless. It has come in various forms and in various conversations that we've had today, that you as an individual, you're worthy, you're enough the way you are, and you can always advance your skills, your knowledge, and your impact wherever you find yourself. And that is how Limitless comes into this all together. I like what Dr. Dominique put up. She put there that being limitless doesn't mean we want to be pushed to our limits, because already we know as professional women of color, we've been tested daily, challenged in so many ways. But, coming up as women of color, to know that it's not just enough to embrace equity, but to live it wherever we find ourselves. So as we wrap up, I would just like each one of our speakers today and Coach Fofo and anyone else just to tie in the limitless part of this as we move forward beyond today.
Who would you like to start? I think we've got Adi on screen, so maybe we start with Adi now.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was the question?
So we're just wrapping up for today, and we've talked about embracing equity, and talking about what we as women, professional women of color, can do moving forward. So we're just tying it into being limitless, knowing what we have as resources, how we can move forward beyond today.
Yes. All right. So one thing I will say, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can do. The one thing I will share today is this: the only reason that we can, trailblaze and get to where we need to be is when we have other women that support us. So basically what I'm saying here is, you can share all the tips and the tricks of things that you can do, but we need sponsors. We need people who can help us. I have someone who helped me get to where I am today. I had someone who helped me open the door. And so what I will say today is, what can you do? I believe in investing in other people. I believe in just investing in their lives. So for everyone who's on this call who says, hey, I want to connect with you, I want you to just chat with me on what I can do to get to the next step, I'm open and available to just have that first conversation. I remember when I joined, came to the US 5 years later, I started this website called Resume Tweaks. And basically when people come from a different country, I help them with their resume, I connect with them with people. So basically what I'm saying here is, do not be afraid to ask. Just ask anyone, like, what can I do? How can I get to the next step? You just never know. You may hear no's, but it's okay to reach out. So let's be that person who can help lift each other up, right? So 2 things: help somebody else up, and then really think about who you are today, because no matter where you are, you can help the next person. So let's invest in other people. Let's pull each other up. We're Black women. It's so hard to do the things that we do. We deal with so much. So really having that person you can speak to, having that person that can sponsor and advocate for you, I think is so important. I'm really just saying, like, I'm here. Please reach out to me. I have my LinkedIn in there, whatever advice or any way that I can support. I think it's really good for us as women to lift each other up. And that's the only way we can embrace equity, right? Because we have a community of people, a tribe of women that can really just help us to grow and develop. All right, that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Dominique?
Yes. Oh, my sister, that resonated with me so deeply. I would like to piggyback off that. One of the things we have to keep in mind, you ever hear that saying that the sky is the limit? It's not. And neither is our ability to build community, build sub-communities, and find where you belong. Because where you belong, someone is looking to belong to. And through collective sisterhood, we can continue to be the example of this is how we embrace all of us. Because remember, equity does not mean equality. And it's not always fair, and it's not meant to be fair for everybody, but that doesn't mean that we don't strive to be seen, supported, and psychologically safe in our communities.
Absolutely. Wow, it's been amazing having you both on today. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And this has been so valuable. I believe the audience will agree with me. I'm trying to make sure we're not missing anything in the chat. Yes, Ade's LinkedIn is right there, and Dr. Dominique's as well. And awesome. Thank you all so much for coming out today. And as we celebrate women across the globe, let's continue to shine the light. Let's be our sister's keeper and continue to shine the light bright and brighter every day. Thank you so much for your time. This has been brought to you by Trailblazer Femme. We're a community where we provide mentoring, coaching, and accountability for professional women of color so that you can live boldly at work and in life, developing and working in your purpose and making positive impact. So probably until next year when we do this again for International Women's Day, but follow us on all our platforms at Trailblazer Femme. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out to Coach Fofo and myself at Thrive Dr. B, and have an amazing day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome. Yes, take care.